I never wanted to live in a neighborhood with an HOA. My wife Maria, however, fell in love with Paradise Falls the moment we drove through its pristine streets. Identical red brick homes with perfectly manicured lawns lined both sides of every street, each one somehow both beautiful and eerily similar. The community boasted a private park, a swimming pool, and according to the realtor, a sense of community you won't find anywhere else. He conveniently glossed over the fact that this sense of community came with a 42-page rulebook. We'd been in our new home for exactly 2 weeks when I first encountered Patricia Wilkins. She appeared on our doorstep one Saturday morning with a clipboard in hand and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Standing at about 5'4", with immaculately styled blonde hair and wearing a pastel blue cardigan despite the summer heat, she introduced herself as the president of the Paradise Falls Homeowners Association. "Welcome to Paradise Falls, Mr. Chen," she said, her smile fixed in place. "I've noticed your garbage bins were still visible from the street yesterday evening after 6 p.m. According to Section 7, Paragraph 12 of our community guidelines, all waste receptacles must be removed from street view within 2 hours of collection." I apologized, explaining that Maria and I had both worked late, but Patricia cut me off mid-sentence. "I understand you're new here, but rules are rules. Consider this a friendly reminder." She handed me a yellow slip of paper that looked suspiciously official for a friendly reminder. As she turned to leave, she added, "Oh, and your mailbox appears to be the wrong shade of brown. It should be cocoa dusk, not mocha dream. You'll need to repaint it by next week." I stared at her retreating form, wondering if I'd just been pranked. Later, when I mentioned the encounter to our neighbor Jim, he laughed nervously. "Patricia's been running this place with an iron fist for 5 years," he said. "I'd fix that mailbox if I were you." Last guy who didn't comply ended up with $2,000 in fines before he finally caved. "That can't be legal," I said. Jim shrugged. "Read your contract. You'd be surprised what you signed away when you bought this place." That night, I dug through our closing documents and discovered Jim was right. We'd signed away more rights than I realized, and Patricia Wilkins had the authority to enforce them. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of my troubles with Paradise Falls' very own HOA Karen. The mailbox incident was just the opening salvo in Patricia's campaign against our household. Despite repainting our mailbox the exact shade of cocoa dusk, which cost me $47 for a specialized paint from the HOA-approved vendor, a new notice appeared on our door the following week. "Dear Mr. Chen, your lawn measures 2.7 inches in certain areas, exceeding our 2.5-inch maximum height requirement. Please remedy this situation within 48 hours to avoid a fine of $75. I measured my grass with a ruler. She was right, by 0.2 of an inch. I mowed the lawn that evening. The next violation arrived 3 days later. Unapproved wind chimes visible from street view. The wind chimes were a housewarming gift from Maria's mother. We moved them to the backyard. Then came notices about excessive sidewalk chalk after my 7-year-old niece visited unauthorized plant species when Maria planted tomatoes in our backyard garden, and improper holiday decoration timing when we put up Christmas lights 2 days before the official December 1st start date. Each violation came with a fine, each incrementally larger than the last. By the end of our second month, we paid nearly $400 to the HOA in penalty fees alone, on top of our regular $250 monthly dues. When I tried to appeal at the monthly HOA meeting, Patricia smiled that same cold smile. "Mr. Chen, I understand your frustration, but rules exist for a reason, to maintain property values and community standards." She gestured around the room at the other board members, who nodded in synchronized agreement. "If we make an exception for you, we'd have to make exceptions for everyone." After the meeting, I approached another board member, a friendly-looking older gentleman named Frank. "Is it always like this?" I asked. He looked around nervously before whispering, Patricia's on a power trip, but nobody wants to stand up to her. She's got dirt on half the neighborhood and friendship with the other half. Just try to stay under her radar. But staying under Patricia's radar proved impossible. The next day, I received a certified letter about our basketball hoop. According to a rule I'd never seen before, portable basketball hoops needed to be stored out of sight when not in use, even though several other homes in the neighborhood had permanent hoops installed. When I pointed this out to Patricia during an impromptu confrontation in her front yard, her eyes narrowed. "Those homeowners have special exemptions," she said. "Perhaps if you were more involved in the community, you'd understand how things work around here." She paused, then added with a smile that sent chills down my spine. "But since you seem so interested in rules, I'll be sure to pay extra attention to your property compliance." It was at that moment I realized Patricia wasn't just enforcing rules. She was targeting us specifically, and it was about to get much worse. Patricia's vendetta accelerated after our basketball hoop confrontation. Violation notices appeared with alarming regularity, sometimes twice in a single week. The most absurd came on a Tuesday morning. Unauthorized vehicle in driveway. The unauthorized vehicle was my own car, which I'd parked at a slightly different angle than usual. When I called Patricia to contest this, she coolly informed me that all vehicles must be parked parallel to the garage door, according to Section 11, Paragraph 8 of the guidelines. The fine was $150. Maria, who had initially loved our neighborhood, began to dread coming home. "It's like living under a microscope," she said one evening. Patricia drove by our house 4 times today. I counted. The final straw came when our next-door neighbor, Sofia Rodriguez, knocked on our door in tears. Patricia had fined her $500 for unauthorized landscape modifications after Sofia planted a small memorial garden for her recently deceased mother. She told me my mother's favorite flowers were not on the approved plant list and that emotional attachments don't override community guidelines, Sofia explained, her voice breaking. "I can't afford this fine. I'm a single mom on a teacher's salary." Something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about petty rules anymore. Patricia was actively hurting people. I invited Sofia in, made her tea, and proposed an idea. What if we fought back? Not just me, but everyone who's been bullied by Patricia and her cronies. Sofia looked skeptical, but intrigued. How? She has all the power. Not necessarily. The HOA is governed by bylaws, and those bylaws have procedures, including how board members are elected and removed. I pulled out the massive binder of HOA documents I'd been studying obsessively. If enough homeowners band together, we could challenge her authority. Over the next week, Sofia and I conducted secret meetings with other frustrated residents. Jim joined immediately, bringing 3 neighbors from his street. Frank, the sympathetic board member, provided insider information about upcoming rule changes Patricia was planning to implement. We discovered we weren't alone. Patricia had been systematically targeting certain homeowners, particularly newcomers and minorities, while allowing her friends and allies to break the same rules without consequences. Our rebellion gained momentum until Patricia somehow caught wind of our meetings. The response was swift and devastating. I returned home from work one Thursday to find a bright orange sticker on my front door visible to the entire neighborhood. Violation notice. Pre-foreclosure warning. According to the notice, we had accumulated over $2,000 in fines, most of which we'd never been properly notified about, and failure to pay within 30 days would result in the HOA placing a lien on our home and beginning foreclosure proceedings. When I called the HOA office demanding an explanation, the administrative assistant, Patricia's niece, informed me that all questions about foreclosure proceedings had to be submitted in writing and would be reviewed at the board's convenience. That evening, as Maria and I sat shell-shocked at our kitchen table surrounded by violation notices, my phone rang. It was Sofia. "They're going after me too," she said, her voice shaking. "And Jim, and everyone else who came to the meetings. Patricia's trying to run us all out of the neighborhood." I hung up and looked at Maria, whose eyes reflected my own fury and determination. "This means war," I said quietly. "What are you going to do?" Maria asked. I already had my laptop open, searching for real estate attorneys who specialized in HOA disputes. "I'm going to find Patricia's weakness," I replied. "And then I'm going to make her regret ever messing with us." The foreclosure threat lit a fire under me. I took a week off work and devoted every waking hour to understanding HOA law, poring over Paradise Falls bylaws, and searching for any legal leverage we could use against Patricia. My first stop was the county records office, where I requested all public documents related to Paradise Falls HOA, financial statements, meeting minutes, incorporation papers, and amendments to the community covenants. The clerk raised an eyebrow at my extensive request, but processed it without comment. While waiting for those records, I met with 3 different attorneys who specialized in HOA disputes. The first 2 offered little hope, explaining that HOAs in our state had extensive legal powers. The third, Eleanor Jimenez, listened carefully to my story before leaning forward with interest. "HOAs do have considerable authority," she acknowledged, "but they're not above the law. They must follow their own bylaws, state regulations, and basic principles of fairness." She agreed to review our case for a reasonable retainer, which Sophia, Jim, and several other neighbors helped cover. We had formed a coalition of 15 households, all victims of Patricia's selective enforcement. 3 days later, I received the county records, 6 boxes of documents dating back to Paradise Falls' founding 20 years ago. For the next 48 hours, Maria and I transformed our living room into an investigation headquarters, organizing papers chronologically and highlighting anything suspicious. What we found was shocking. First, the HOA had been illegally increasing dues beyond the cap established in the original covenants. While small annual increases were permitted, Patricia had implemented a 15% hike last year, well above the 3% maximum allowed. Second, multiple architectural guidelines Patricia rigorously enforced had never been properly adopted through the required homeowner voting process. The infamous cocoa dusk mailbox color requirement, not legally binding. But the real bombshell came when we cross-referenced the HOA's financial statements with the meeting minutes. Over $175,000 had been spent on landscaping improvements at various board members' homes, including a complete backyard renovation of Patricia's property, disguised as common area enhancements. "This is embezzlement," Maria whispered as we stared at the documents. Just as concerning, the foreclosure threat against us violated state law requiring a formal hearing before such severe action could be taken. When I shared these findings with Eleanor, she smiled for the first time since taking our case. "This is more than enough to file an injunction against any foreclosure proceedings," she said. "But if you want to truly end Patricia's reign, we need to go bigger." That evening, as we were documenting our findings, a heavy knock came at our door. It was Patricia, accompanied by 2 men in suits whom she introduced as the HOA's attorneys. "Mr. Chen," she said with a smirk, "I understand you've been making baseless accusations and disturbing the community with rumors about the board's conduct." One of the attorneys stepped forward. "We're serving you with a cease and desist letter. Additionally, the board has voted to accelerate the timeline on your foreclosure proceedings due to your disruptive activities." "You can't do that," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We already have," Patricia replied. "You have 10 days to vacate or pay all outstanding fines, plus additional penalties totaling $7,500. As they turned to leave, Patricia glanced back with that same cold smile. "You should have just followed the rules, Mr. Chen. Nobody wins against me." What she didn't know was that earlier that day, I had made one final discovery, one that would change everything. Hidden in the oldest documents, In the original incorporation papers filed when Paradise Falls was first built, was a critical detail about the HOA's legal status that Patricia had either overlooked or deliberately concealed. It was the key to not just stopping her, but destroying her power completely. The morning after Patricia's ultimatum, I called an emergency meeting of our homeowner coalition at Jim's garage. 15 anxious faces looked to me for leadership as I laid out what I'd discovered. Paradise Falls HOA was established as a non-profit corporation under state law, I explained, pointing to the incorporation documents. But in 2018, when Patricia became president, they failed to file required annual reports for 2 consecutive years. Eleanor, who had joined us, took over. What James found is extraordinary. The state administratively dissolved the HOA corporation in 2020. Patricia reinstated it a year later, but, and this is crucial, she filed incorrect paperwork that classified it as a different type of entity without transferring the proper assets or obtaining homeowner consent. What does that mean in plain English? Sophia asked. It means, Eleanor said with a satisfied smile, that every fine, every rule, and every action Patricia has taken for the past 4 years has been legally invalid. The HOA has been operating without proper authority. A stunned silence fell over the garage, followed by a cascade of questions. Eleanor patiently explained the ramifications. We could not only stop the foreclosure proceedings, but potentially recover all improperly collected fines and dues. But we shouldn't show our full hand immediately, I cautioned. We need a strategy. Over the next 2 hours, we developed a 3-pronged attack. First, Eleanor would file an emergency injunction to halt all foreclosure proceedings against coalition members, citing the HOA's improper legal status. Second, we would formally request a special meeting of all homeowners, as was our right under the original bylaws, to present our evidence of financial misconduct. Third, and this was my personal mission, we would find and contact the original developer of Paradise Falls, whose signature was required on any fundamental changes to the community covenants, but had been forged on several amendments during Patricia's tenure. The next 3 days were a whirlwind of activity. While Eleanor prepared legal documents, I took the gamble and drove 4 hours to meet Martin Greenfield, the retired developer who had built Paradise Falls 20 years ago. Though initially suspicious, once I showed him the forged documents bearing his signature, his face flushed with anger. That's not my signature, he confirmed, examining the papers. I haven't signed anything related to Paradise Falls since I sold the last property in 2012. Better yet, Martin agreed to attend our special homeowner meeting and testify about the forgery. Meanwhile, Sophia and Jim coordinated a door-to-door campaign, discreetly informing other homeowners about the upcoming meeting and the evidence we discovered. The response was overwhelming. Years of resentment toward Patricia's regime had created a powder keg of discontent just waiting for a spark. That spark came when Eleanor's injunction was granted. The court order was delivered to Patricia at the HOA office, while several of our coalition members happened to be submitting maintenance requests. According to Jim, who witnessed it, Patricia's face turned purple as she read the document ordering an immediate cease of all collection and enforcement actions pending a legal review. The official notices for our special meeting went out the next day, with the bland title, Discussion of HOA Legal Status and Financial Review. Patricia immediately tried to cancel it, claiming the board had to approve any special meetings, but Eleanor had anticipated this move. She attached a legal opinion letter to every notice, explaining that under the original bylaws, which were the only valid governing documents given the HOA's improper reinstatement, homeowners could call special meetings with signatures from just 10% of residents, a threshold we'd easily surpassed. The night before the meeting, my doorbell rang. When I answered, I found Patricia standing alone on my porch, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something closer to desperation. Let's be reasonable, Mr. Chen, she said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we could work something out privately. Maybe waive your outstanding fines as a show of good faith. I studied her face, noting the fear behind her eyes. This isn't just about my fines anymore, Patricia. This is about accountability. You don't understand what you're doing, she hissed, dropping the friendly facade. I'd built this community into what it is. Without me enforcing standards, property values will plummet. You'll all be living next to painted purple houses and cars on blocks. I think we'll take our chances, I replied calmly. See you at the meeting tomorrow. As she stormed off, I felt not triumph but resolve. Tomorrow would change everything in Paradise Falls. The Paradise Falls Community Center had never been so packed. By 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before our special meeting was scheduled to begin, every seat was filled, and residents lined the walls. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of curiosity, resentment, and hope. Patricia and the board members sat at their usual table on a small raised platform at the front of the room, looking decidedly uncomfortable. Patricia attempted to maintain her air of authority, but her nervously tapping fingers betrayed her unease. At precisely 7:00 p.m., I stepped to the podium. The room fell silent. Thank you all for coming tonight, I began. Many of you know me as the guy who apparently can't keep his grass short enough or his mailbox the right shade of brown. A ripple of knowing laughter broke the tension. But tonight isn't about individual grievances. It's about something much more serious: the legal and financial integrity of our homeowners association. For the next 20 minutes, I methodically presented our findings, with Eleanor providing legal context at key points. We explained the improper dissolution and reinstatement of the HOA corporation, displayed charts showing the misappropriation of funds, and outlined the pattern of selective rule enforcement. When Martin Greenfield, the original developer, took the floor and confirmed that his signatures had been forged on critical documents, audible gasps echoed through the room. Throughout our presentation, Patricia's expressions cycled between dismissive, angry, and finally, as the evidence mounted, alarmed. Twice she attempted to interrupt, but Eleanor smoothly cited the meeting procedures that gave presenters the floor until they yielded it. When we concluded, Patricia shot to her feet. "This is absurd," she declared. "These are complex legal matters being grossly misrepresented to manipulate you. Our HOA is perfectly legitimate, and our finances are reviewed annually by your brother-in-law's accounting firm," interrupted Frank, the board member who had secretly helped us. He stood up from the board table, turning to face the crowd rather than his fellow board members. "I've served on this board for 3 years, and I've watched Patricia bend and break rules whenever it suited her. I was too cowardly to speak up before, but not anymore." The room erupted as Frank detailed how Patricia had pressured board members to approve her agenda, including the extravagant landscaping improvements that had primarily benefited board members' properties. Patricia's face flushed crimson. "You're all going to regret this," she sputtered. "Do you have any idea what will happen to your property values without proper enforcement? Without me?" From the back of the room, Sophia's clear voice rang out, "We'll manage." What happened next exceeded even our most optimistic scenarios. Eleanor proposed an immediate vote to remove the current board and elect an interim leadership committee until the HOA's legal status could be properly restored. Under the original bylaws, such action required a 2/3 majority. The vote was 118 to 7. As the meeting adjourned, shell-shocked board members filed out while residents gathered in excited clusters. Patricia remained seated at the board table, alone, staring blankly at the empty room as her kingdom crumbled around her. But even in defeat, Patricia wasn't finished fighting. As I packed up our documentation, she approached me, her voice low and venomous. "This isn't over, Chen. I still have connections in this community you can't imagine. Enjoy your victory while it lasts." I met her gaze steadily. Patricia, the problem wasn't that you enforced rules. It's that you thought the rules didn't apply to you. Little did I know that Patricia had one final, desperate card to play. One that would force me to make a decision that would change both our lives permanently. Patricia's threat wasn't empty. Within days of the special meeting, signs of her connections became evident. The interim committee discovered that financial records had mysteriously disappeared from the HOA office. Key documents regarding the landscaping projects were missing, and the HOA's bank account had been drained of $47,000 through a transfer authorized the night after our meeting. More disturbingly, a whisper campaign began spreading through Paradise Falls. I was a troublemaker who had moved in specifically to destabilize the community. The evidence against Patricia was fabricated. Property values had already dropped 15% because of the chaos I created. When my car was keyed and our mailbox, still properly painted cocoa dusk, was smashed, Maria urged me to let it go. "We won the battle," she said. "The HOA can't foreclose on us anymore. Maybe that's enough." But I couldn't let it go, not when Patricia was still causing harm. The final straw came when Sophia was passed over for promotion at her school after someone, anonymous, but we all knew who, sent a letter to the principal claiming she was involved in community disruption and potential financial impropriety. It was time to end this once and for all. With Eleanor's guidance, I filed a formal lawsuit against Patricia personally, not just the HOA, for fraud, financial misappropriation, and defamation. The complaint detailed every violation we discovered, with supporting evidence meticulously organized by Maria, who had proven remarkably talented at forensic accounting. Patricia's response was immediate. A countersuit claiming I had defamed her and intentionally interfered with the HOA's business operations. Her lawsuit demanded $500,000 in damages. The local newspaper caught wind of the legal battle, and suddenly our quiet community dispute became regional news. The headline, "Paradise Lost. HOA President Accused of Embezzlement and Forgery," ran above a photo of Patricia leaving her attorney's office. 3 days before our first court appearance, I received a call from Patricia's lawyer suggesting a settlement meeting. Maria and Eleanor accompanied me to the attorney's office downtown, where we found Patricia looking significantly less polished than usual, the strain of recent weeks evident in her face. Her offer was simple. She would drop her countersuit if I dropped mine. No admission of wrongdoing, no recovery of funds, just a mutual agreement to walk away. "Absolutely not," I said without hesitation. "Mr. Chen," her attorney said soothingly, "litigation is expensive and unpredictable. Even if you believe you're right, the process could take years." I leaned forward. "I'm prepared for that. Is Patricia?" The settlement meeting ended in a stalemate, but as we were leaving, Patricia followed me into the hallway. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice a mixture of anger and exhaustion. "Really, what is your endgame here?" "Justice," I replied simply. "Return the money you took from the HOA, admit what you did, and agree never to serve on the board again." She laughed bitterly. "You want me to destroy myself? Not going to happen. Then I'll see you in court." The day of our preliminary hearing dawned bright and clear. Eleanor had prepared meticulously, and our case was solid. What we didn't expect was the crowd. Nearly 40 Paradise Falls residents had come to witness the proceedings, including every member of our original coalition. As the judge reviewed the initial pleadings, Patricia's attorney requested a brief recess to confer with his client. 10 minutes stretched to 30, then an hour. When they finally returned, Patricia looked defeated. Her attorney addressed the court. "Your Honor, in the interest of resolving this matter efficiently, my client wishes to propose a settlement." The terms were everything we had asked for, with one addition. Patricia wanted the settlement agreement sealed from public view. In exchange, she would repay $178,450 to the HOA Treasury, the full amount of misappropriated funds plus interest resigned from the board, and agree never to serve in HOA leadership again, sign a statement acknowledging the forgeries and improper reinstatement of the corporation. After a brief consultation with Eleanor and Sophia, who represented our coalition, I agreed to the sealed settlement, with one non-negotiable condition of my own. Patricia would make the repayment in monthly installments directly to the HOA account over 5 years, with me as the designated recipient to verify each payment. "You want me to pay you?" Patricia hissed across the table during our final negotiation. "Not me personally," I clarified. "You'll pay the HOA, but I'll be the one confirming you've made each payment on time, every month for the next 5 years. After a moment of internal struggle visible on her face, Patricia nodded once and signed the agreement. Outside the courthouse, amid congratulations from our neighbors, Sophia hugged me tightly. "You did it," she whispered. "You actually defeated the HOA dragon." I smiled but shook my head. We did it. All of us together. As the crowd dispersed, I noticed Patricia standing alone by her car, watching me. Our eyes met briefly across the parking lot, their gaze still defiant, but now tinged with something new. Respect, perhaps, or at least recognition that she had underestimated her opponent. I had entered this battle just wanting to protect my home. I emerged having transformed an entire community. 1 year after the settlement, Paradise Falls was almost unrecognizable, not because it had descended into the chaos Patricia had predicted, but because it had blossomed into the true community it was always meant to be. With the recovered funds, the newly elected HOA board, which I had steadfastly refused to join despite numerous requests, had renovated the playground, repaired the community pool, and established a reserve fund to keep dues stable for years to come. The infamous rulebook had been completely revised, reduced from 42 pages to a reasonable 10, focusing on essential maintenance and safety rather than controlling minutiae. Under the new leadership, fines became rare last resorts rather than primary enforcement tools. Small changes brought new life to the neighborhood. Children's chalk art decorated driveways, a wider variety of flowers brightened front yards, and basketball hoops no longer needed to disappear at sunset. Christmas lights went up when families chose, and the occasional garden gnome took up residence without incident. More importantly, neighbors actually talked to each other now. The monthly HOA meetings, once dreaded disciplinary sessions, transformed into community gatherings with refreshments and open discussion. As for Patricia, she kept her part of the bargain with bitter consistency. On the first of every month, she made her payment to the HOA account, and I received an automatic notification to verify it. We never spoke, but occasionally I would see her walking her dog on the far side of the neighborhood, keeping to herself. Curiosity eventually got the better of me, and I asked Frank, who still served on the board, what had happened to her. "She sold her house 6 months ago, but couldn't move far because of the settlement terms," he explained. "She's renting an apartment just outside Paradise Falls. I hear she's working in real estate now." The irony wasn't lost on me. On the anniversary of our courthouse showdown, Maria and I hosted a backyard barbecue for the neighbors who had stood with us during the fight. As twilight fell, Sophia raised her glass in a toast. "To James and Maria," she said, "who taught us all that rules matter, but community matters more." Glasses clinked as I wrapped an arm around Maria's waist, savoring the moment. After everyone had gone home, we sat on our patio, listening to the gentle chime of wind chimes that would have once earned us a violation notice. "You know what's weird?" Maria said, nestling against my shoulder. "In a way, we owe Patricia a thank you." I looked at her in surprise. "How do you figure that?" Before her, this was just a place we lived. Fighting her is what made it home. Maria gestured toward the houses around us. She accidentally created the community she always claimed to be protecting. The next morning, I checked my email and found the usual notification. Payment received from P. Wilkins. Right on time, as always. On impulse, I did something I'd never done before. I replied to the automated message with a simple note. Neighborhood picnic this Saturday at the park. Everyone's welcome. I never expected a response, and technically, I didn't get one. But that Saturday, as families gathered on the grass and children played freely without fear of violating any rules, I glimpsed a familiar figure at the edge of the park. Patricia stood watching for a moment, her expression unreadable from a distance, before turning and walking away. I like to think I saw the faintest smile on her face, recognition, perhaps, that Paradise Falls had indeed become the paradise it had always promised to be, just not in the way she had envisioned. As for me, I never regretted moving to a neighborhood with an HOA. After all, it taught me that sometimes the rules we live by are only as good as the people who enforce them, and that standing up to a bully isn't just about protecting yourself, but about protecting everyone. And every month when Patricia's payment arrives, it reminds me that justice, while sometimes slow and difficult, is always worth fighting for. The end.